It was a rainy morning and the sky seemed to weep in sympathy with your soul. I stood at the window of my tiny apartment, watching the raindrops race down the glass. The world outside looked bleak, but somehow, the rain brought me a strange sense of comfort. It was as if the world was cleansing itself, washing away yesterday's grime. I wished I could do the same, wash away the pain, the regret, and the guilt that clung to me like a second skin. I had been out of the hospital for a few weeks by then, but the emotional and spiritual wounds were still raw. Physically I was healing, but inside, I was far from whole. I had made it through the darkest moments of my life, but the road ahead was still uncertain. Every step felt heavy, like walking through quicksand. My marriage had fallen apart, and the shame of that failure haunted me. I had spent years building a life of service and faith, and now I wasn't sure if I could ever return to the man I once was. One afternoon, as I sat in the stillness of my apartment, I received a phone call. It was a voice I hadn't heard in a few months. Mark Moses, my old friend and mentor. His voice was warm and familiar, a reminder of the man I had once been. We talked for a long time about life, faith, and our trials, and then he said something that struck me. "Cleon, God isn't done with you yet." Those words echoed in my mind long after we hung up. Could it be true? Could God still have a purpose for me, even after everything I had been through? The thought filled me with a strange mixture of hope and fear. I wanted to believe it, but I was afraid to hope again, fearing failure. I began to pray again, not the desperate pleading prayers I had once uttered, but quiet, humble prayers. I asked God to show me the way forward and help me find a path to redemption, not just in His eyes but in my own. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I also knew I couldn't stay where I was. Not long after that call, an unexpected opportunity presented. An invitation to spend Christmas in Scotland, with my dear friend Robin and his family. The offer couldn't have come at a more crucial time. The weight of the past months and the struggles of the past year had left me drained, spiritually and emotionally. Robin knew me well enough to understand how much Christmas meant to me. It wasn't just a holiday but a time of renewal, warmth, and family, a time that had always lifted my spirits. Knowing how difficult things had been, they had arranged everything, even paying for my ticket in full. It felt like a lifeline. At first I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I had the energy to go. The thought of spending Christmas with a joyful family felt so far removed from the darkness I had been living in. But something deep inside nudged me forward. This invitation felt like more than just a holiday. An opportunity for healing, a small window of hope in a season where I had struggled to find any. With that thought in mind, I packed my bags, still unsure, and boarded a plane to Scotland. From the moment I arrived, I was enveloped by the warmth and love of Robin's family. The cold Scottish winter outside was no match for the joy that filled their home. Christmas lights twinkled in every corner, the scent of pine from the freshly cut tree in the living room, and laughter echoed from every room. It had been a long time since I had felt this kind of peace, that came not from anything I had done, but simply from being surrounded by people who cared about me. Robin's family welcomed me as one of their own, and from the first evening, I could feel the weight on my heart beginning to lift. We spent our days playing games, hunting for deer in the crisp Scottish countryside, and gathering around the fire in the evenings. We talked about everything, life, faith, struggles, but the conversations were never heavy. It was as if, for those few precious days, I could finally breathe again. One of the most memorable moments was Christmas Eve. The family gathered to attend a small service at the local church, its stone walls lit by flickering candlelight. The air was filled with hymns, voices rising in harmony as we celebrated the birth of Christ. It wasn't a grand service, but one of the most powerful I had experienced in years. I found myself closing my eyes, letting the music wash over me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt God's presence again. Not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet, gentle way that reminded me He had never left. Christmas morning was like stepping into a scene from a storybook. There was no snow on the ground outside, but inside, the warmth of the fire and the love of the family created a sense of belonging that I hadn't felt in years. We opened gifts, shared stories, and laughed until our sides hurt. It was a simple day, yet it was one of the best Christmases I had experienced in an exceedingly long time. As the days passed, I realized that this time with Robin and his family wasn't just a holiday, it was a gift of healing. The joy, the laughter, the shared meals, and even the quiet moments together were slowly knitting my heart back together. I hadn't realized how much I needed this until I was there, feeling the warmth seep into the cold places that had taken root in my soul. But as with all good things, the visit came to an end. After a few days, it was time to return to Finland. I said my goodbyes, feeling bittersweet. Scotland had been a sanctuary, a brief but much-needed escape from the struggles I had been facing. Yet, as I boarded the plane back to Finland, a familiar dread settled in my stomach. The joy and peace I had found during Christmas felt fragile, and as the distance between Scotland and Finland grew, so did the weight of my depression. It wasn't long after my return that the darkness began to creep back in. The cold, lonely nights in Finland felt even more oppressive than before, and the fleeting hope I had clung to during Christmas began to slip through my fingers. I tried to hold on to the memories of my time in Scotland, the warmth of the fire, the laughter of Robin's family, the peace I had felt in the church, but it was like trying to grasp smoke. The joy of those days felt like a distant dream, and I soon found myself sinking back into the despair that had haunted me for so long. Despite the healing I had experienced, the reality of my life was still there. The brokenness, the unanswered questions, the unresolved pain, it all came rushing back. The battle wasn't over. I had hoped that the time away would be enough to carry me through, but it was becoming clear that this journey would take more than a holiday. The darkness I had been fighting wasn't something I could escape by changing my surroundings. And yet, even amid my returning depression, something had shifted. The time in Scotland reminded me of what it felt like to be alive again, to feel joy and connection. It had shown me that even in the darkest times, there were still moments of light. And though those moments seemed fleeting, they were real. They were enough to remind me that I wasn't alone in this journey, that there were people who loved and cared about me, and that God's presence, though often quiet, was still with me. As the days in Finland stretched, I found myself clinging to those memories, not as a way to escape the present, but as a reminder of what could be. I began to understand that healing wasn't a one-time event, it was a process, a slow, sometimes painful process of allowing light to break through the cracks of my brokenness. Scotland had given me a taste of that light, and though the darkness was still there, I now had something to hold on to. Thank you for being here. Please share this with someone who needs hope. If you want to order the book or find more resources, just head over to https://linkter.e/depthstowheights. See you next Wednesday for Chapter 4. God bless you and keep you.